Hi everyone, this is our channel, Meet the Real Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
This is Tina, and this is a story about me and my biological mother. My mother is sitting in the cafe of a garden center, staring at her cup of tea. I'm over the other side of the shop looking at some strawberry preserves. I want to attract her attention, but the word mom sticks in my throat. I use it so infrequently. Instead of calling out, I just walk over and show her the jam. Ever since I left home 15 years ago, the relationship between my mother and me has worsened. In hindsight, it was never very good to start with, but it's taken 15 years of counseling and soul searching to realize that. The fact of it is that my mother and I don't like each other much. We don't hate each other, we're just sort of indifferent. There, I've said it, indifferent. Saying it feels like committing some sort of crime. My mother and I live hundreds of miles apart, and in the case of most of my friends, this should mean that visiting home should be a time of joy and excitement. Instead, they are weekends of tense, polite conversation, both of us desperately searching for something in common to talk about. And that is usually what she's currently watching on television. As a 20-something woman, I'm constantly surrounded by reminders that my mom should be my best friend. Advertising aimed at my demographic features glamorous, youthful mothers going to the salons with their best friend daughters. Because it's all so alien to me, I tend to become a little bit fixated. I tend to look beyond the principal plot lines of films and become obsessed with the parts that involve a mother and a daughter for a large, loving family headed by a quirky matriarch. When the film Mamma Mia came out, I went to see it with a girlfriend for a bit of a laugh. It was mainly about love affairs between Meryl Streep and her exes. As I watched, I was as always bewildered by the apparently natural bond that mothers and daughters have on screen. Another film. It's complicated. Again with Meryl Streep has a plot that hinges on her post-divorce relationship with her ex-husband. But the highlights for me, the way her children clustered around her and the way she reacted when they all came back to visit. Though I know it's not just on screen. My friend Susie has the same exact sort of relationship with her mom. It baffles and fascinates me. They talk every single day, sometimes more often, and tell each other everything. I didn't have an unhappy upbringing. I wasn't a happy child, but that wasn't down to child abuse or neglect. I was well clothed, fed, and I even had ballet lessons. I went to university paid for by my parents, and I knew, and I still know, that there's always somewhere to stay if I need to. But my mother and I never had the sort of closeness I saw in my friends' relationships. They would go shopping or share secrets. They would tell their moms things about their lives. The one time I tried to ask my mother about her teenage years, she told me to mind my own business. And so I did. I grew up minding my own business, and she minded hers. I left home as soon as possible and met my now husband at university, and he quickly stepped into the role of best friend and emotional support giver. I made enduring friendships, most of which I believe to be unconditional. Most of my friends believe me to be a loving and caring individual, and I know I could turn to any one of them in an emergency, and them to me. Yet, I cannot remember the last time my mother and I hugged, even though I hug my friends all the time, and the very thought of it makes me cringe. My mother is the last person I go to in a crisis. She is certainly the last person to whom I would tell a secret or a problem. And if I'm honest, I don't need to anymore, as I have my own friends now. But my lack of a close friendship with her bothers other people a lot. When I say that I don't have a close relationship with her, they ask whether we fight a lot. But no, I don't recall ever having a fight with my mother. That would entail caring enough to bother. I used to go through phases of worrying about it and trying to repair the damage, but all the while I was aware that I was doing it for other people. I visit infrequently, but I visit. I do it not so I can see her, but if I'm honest, so her neighbors and family can see me visiting. A few years ago, before I realized I didn't care anymore, I called her up and asked whether we could sort it out. Her answer told me everything I needed to know. Sort what out? I stopped bothering from that moment on. Now my principal concern is explaining to people why I don't see her that often. And I feel guilty for not really having a good enough reason. My parents weren't divorced. My father died a few years ago. There has been no huge family dispute. There's no big skeleton in anyone's cupboard, well, not mine anyway. I recently went to see a nurse for a routine appointment, and she asked a host of questions about my mother. Eventually, I had to confess that I didn't know half the answers. She asked whether I could find out. My heart sank as I imagined having to give away a detail of my life, such as why I was going to the nurse, to my own mother. Mother's Day is a nightmare. Trying to find a card that doesn't say my mother is my best friend or the best mother in the world or my heroine is not easy, let me tell you. Others try to fix it for me. Why don't you book a spa weekend for your mom? The very thought of my mother agreeing to or enjoying something like that is just laughable. Or they ask, why don't you go for counseling? This would be all well and good if she would ever condone the idea, but it implies a relationship that needs to be mended. Why does it need to be fixed at all? Were my mother a woman I had met on a train and chatted to for half an hour, she would be one of the last people in the world I would want to talk to for a further half hour. If she wasn't my mother, she would be someone I groaned about having to spend any time with. I simply grew up and discovered that I didn't like my mother as a human being. She's not like me. She's self-obsessed, not interested in others, thoughtless, and incapable of genuine warmth. She has no concept of giving love to receive love, and has never asked me a single meaningful question about my life or career. Some people might feel that I have a duty as a daughter to be there for my mother, that it's down to me to repair our relationship. But because of the way she's raised me, I don't feel there is a relationship to repair. I wish my mother no harm, and if she were in trouble, I would help her like a shot. But I would also be there for any of my neighbors and the old man who swears at people from the bus stop across the road.
Being famous is a dream for most people, but achieving this particular dream is not easy. It takes a lot of perseverance, and maybe even some luck. Listen to my story. My name is Rona, and I'm 18 years old. I live with my mom and my sister. My dad passed away long ago. We live in a very poor neighborhood, where drug dealing and death are everywhere. My mom is a nurse, but even so, her salary is barely enough to make ends meet. I have always wanted a better life. I often admired famous people, like singers and actors, and I imagined myself living in their world of fame and glamour. What I would give to be a famous person like them. I had a dream. I wanted to be a clothes designer or a fashion model. I would draw different styles of clothes and stand in front of the mirror, posing like a model. I just knew that my clothes would fit perfectly. But here's the thing. I wasn't thin enough to be a model. This was the obstacle between me and my dream, so I decided to go on a diet while searching for a job. One day, I read the news about some famous clothes designer and learned that a fashion show was going to be held near my area soon. Within a week, they would be holding an audition to select some local models, so I saw an opportunity to enter the competition, get selected as a model, and make my dream come true. I did everything I could to lose weight. When the audition day came, I tried to get in the fashion show, but the security guards wouldn't let me pass because I looked too ordinary. So I went home, dressed up like a princess, and then returned, looking more important. I was allowed in. I saw many fit girls with nice slim figures. They were so beautiful and seemed so enthusiastic about the audition and their chances of being selected. I felt like I was watching a fashion magazine photo shoot. I signed up for the audition. One by one, the girls performed in front of the judges. Some came out sad, and some came out ecstatic. After seeing this fierce competition, with many beautiful girls being turned down, I lost hope and turned around to leave. That was when I bumped into a woman. Her name was Linda. I excused myself and said, "I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention." Linda replied, "It's okay. Are you one of the competitors?" "Yes, I wanted to, but seeing all these beautiful girls, I don't think I have a chance. Goodbye." "No, you shouldn't give up so easily," she said. Her kind manner persuaded me to turn around and try out for the audition anyway. As I walked onto the stage, I noticed that Linda was one of the judges. She winked at me as our eyes met. I did my best. Once my audition was over, I looked at Linda, and she smiled and gestured with her head that I had done well. However, one judge told me that my performance was good, but my figure was not. I needed to lose more weight. Linda told me that I was put on a list of potential models with the stipulation that I could re-audition if I lost more weight. So I buckled down and really hit the diet hard. I began starving myself. Mom felt miserable watching what I was putting myself through. I managed to lose about 40 kilos. Unfortunately, I had become so thin so quickly that my health began to suffer. I started feeling depressed and even got dizzy at times. When the next audition day came, I entered the audition room and once again met Linda. She looked at me with worry on her face and said, "What have you done to yourself?" "You told me to do my best, so I did," I said. I walked onto the stage. The judge who had told me to lose more weight saw me and was shocked. He asked me, "How were you able to lose so much weight so fast?" When I began my performance, my weakness caused some dizzy spells, which caused my modeling motions to be unsteady and awkward. Linda was clearly worried. As she watched my performance, as if she expected me to fall at any moment, the judges gave me poor marks, and I was rejected as potential model. I was greatly disappointed because I had tried so hard. I said to the judges, "But I followed your instructions and lost more weight." The one judge said, "Yes, you lost more weight, but then you let your performance suffer as a result." Then I passed out and woke up later in a hospital bed. Mom and my sister and Linda were waiting at my bedside. I asked them what had happened. "You're too weak. You fainted on stage," Linda explained. Suddenly her phone rang, and after she answered and listened for a moment, I heard her say, "What? Oh no." After she hung up, I asked her what had happened. She told me that the plane carrying the judges and the competitors had crashed. There were no survivors. They would have to start the whole competition and selection process all over again. Though I was saddened by the tremendous loss of life in the plane crash, I chose to interpret this as a sign from above that I had another chance to achieve my dream, that I should not give up. With Linda's guidance and advice during my rehabilitation program, I was able to achieve an optimum weight with good health. Fate and my perseverance had given me a second chance, and I would not waste it. I am now ready and determined to try again.
I am Matthew, 21 years old, and I must tell you something. I am a madman. I need treatment. But what kind of treatment is there for my kind of madness? You see before you a man with torn clothes who speaks to himself all the time. I used to be a doctor, but I left medicine to pursue aromacology. In case you were wondering, aromacology is the study of fragrances, such as scents of flowers and how they affect people. Let me tell you my story. My parents were very proud of me because I was intelligent, well-known, and well-respected at my university. I earned high marks in all my courses. Dad wanted me to join the College of Medicine because he had always dreamed of my becoming a doctor, and I felt that I couldn't deny him that. My parents did their best to make me happy and to help me achieve Dad's dream. But to be honest with you, medicine, engineering, the arts, none of these interested me at all. They weren't my dream. I loved flowers and their fragrances, like rose and honeysuckle. I would extract fragrances from them and give them as gifts to my friends and family. They all really enjoyed these aromatic gifts. My dilemma was that I had to find a way to tell Dad that I would rather study botany, plants, and aromacology, fragrances, over medicine any day. I knew he would think that I was crazy to give up the lofty study of medicine to work with flowers, but what can I say? I have loved flowers and fragrances ever since I was a youngster. I have always been fascinated by exotic flowers and scents. Learning how to make fragrances from flowers required me to meet with a lot of people who worked in this field. One day, I had to face the moment I had been dreading because my parents had arranged a large social gathering to celebrate my success at the university and my joining the College of Medicine. Dad asked me to tell everyone about my ambitions as a doctor. I suddenly knew that the moment had come when I needed to make my startling announcement to my parents. I told the audience I had decided that being a doctor was not for me and that I was going to change my field of study. Dad looked at me with an astonished look on his face, and then he began laughing. He thought I was joking. Then I turned to him and said, "Dad, I'm not joking. I'm serious. I want to study flowers and fragrances, similar to the types of gifts I've given you before." The audience suddenly got very quiet. They could sense that this was an epiphany for my parents. The embarrassment and shock in the air was palpable. Dad looked at me and said with an affected smile, "Matthew, you were born to be a doctor. Forget all this nonsense about silly flowers." A little testily, I said, "Dad, extracting fragrances from flowers is not silly." Dad said, "Bah, forget about that." The party spirit was somewhat subdued after this testy exchange. Regardless, in deference to Dad, I began studying medicine. But most of my energy and attention was directed towards flowers and their fragrances. Sometimes I would spend time with my medical friends, and sometimes with my aromacology friends that I had met earlier. I spent my first year in medical college earning high marks as usual, but I had no passion for it. It neither excited nor interested me. There came a day when I had had my fill of medical studies and just couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to leave the College of Medicine to pursue my true passion, flowers and fragrances. When I told Dad of my decision, he was very upset, cursing at me and accusing me of being mad, insane, crazy. I repeated that I had zero interest in medicine and stated that the true madness was sticking with a field that I really didn't like at all. I moved away from home and stayed with a friend for a while before finally renting and moving into a small apartment. I faced a lot of obstacles in the beginning, but I didn't give up. I set up an arboretum by planting some flowers and nurturing them. I was working on a rare kind of fragrance extracted from a variety of flowers. I had to travel to obtain these specimens. My product fragrances weren't successful at first, but I persisted. Initially, I offered my fragrance products to various factories, but all refused my offer. So I continued in my studies. I worked in many different places. In the evenings, I would spend all my free time doing my experiments. Over time, I grew more proficient in producing unique fragrances. Then one day, I received a phone call from a famous factory. The factory owner told me that he might be interested in working with me, so I sent him some samples of my work, and they delighted him. And I was delighted that he was delighted. Thus began the lucrative stage of my new endeavor. I started earning a decent income and achieved a modicum of success in the end. After a while, I called Dad and asked him to forgive me, and he did, finally realizing that my passions were not necessarily his passions, and that I must pursue what I enjoyed the most. I have my own factory now. I achieved my dream in the end. My advice to you, the readers, is never to give up when pursuing your dreams. With persistence, you will be successful one day. So what do you think? Was I a madman to give up medicine for aromacology? Was I a madman to give up medicine for aromacology?